name is Terrence Mulvey. I own the fishing vessel Tiger Joe. I am a state water gill netter out of Port Judith, Rhode Island, and I am a victim of Deepwater Wind. Back in 2015, 5 wind turbines were scheduled to be built in state waters south of Block Island, my historical fishing grounds. The project was late to get started. I was able to fish the first third of that year. On the second third of that year was when we were asked to stay out of the area. On the second third, when construction was supposed to start, the barge they were using damaged the first wind tower that they were trying to put in. Deepwater Wind had to spend money for a multi-million-dollar jack-up barge, which delayed the project even longer. We were kept out of the area, told we couldn't go in the area to fish. They presented us with an offer. We didn't like the offer. They withdrew the offer. They told us that it was voluntary, not mandatory, to compensate us for any of our losses. I went as far as to do a 5-year average on my stocks to show the good years, the bad years. We took the average. I presented that to them. The first third of that year when I was able to fish, I was right on track to have an average year. Not a good year, not an off year. I was within $100. They slid that around the table like it was a hot potato. They came back with an offer. My son and myself refused it. We got nothing. They never told us when they were driving the pylons that it would kill the fish. When I brought that to their attention, the first time Aileen Kenny ever slipped up and said, yes, it did damage the air bladders on some fish. Now she denies it and says that she had gotten reports of that. That's how they changed the wording around. When we would haul our nets, my son brought it to my attention that the day they were driving the pylons, all the fish in the nets were dead. The day that there was bad weather and they were in, but we still fished, we would haul the nets. All the fish were alive. They came back to me and said all the fish I caught were dead anyways. Now how do you catch a dead fish? They're not floating around the bottom dead unless their pile driving's killing them. And even on that, they're not going to get tangled in the net. That just doesn't happen. Their word is no good. Even in their handshakes are no good. So we can't let this happen to anyone else. They don't have a good track record, and they're not obligated to pay. They're not going to pay. They've moved on from the project south of Block Island onto the next project, and we are discarded.
Dude, you all right?
Yeah.
All right, I think
it just gets me, you know?
Of course it does, man.
Bring it all up.
Yeah, of course it does.
There's so much more I can come up with, but I'm getting too choked up just bringing it up.
Gary Cobb. I've been a nearshore fisheries representative throughout the South Fork Wind project over the past year, and it initially piqued my interest because of the potential electromagnetic frequency implications, as I have a background in that field. My experience in the Air Force and my experience with Grumman. I did significant testing in regards to electromagnetic frequency. And, you know, a year into the process now, and in spite of what we're being told by various entities, including the developer and various state agencies, there are still serious concerns about the potential effects of EMF on our nearshore fisheries. And our offshore fisheries as well, but particularly our nearshore fisheries, as the water column there is obviously much shallower than it is in the offshore environment. The problem with the studies that they continue to refer to is that they are not project or site or species specific to Eastern Long Island and the nearshore fishery off of Wainscott. The studies that have been done, the demersal studies and the studies that have been done in Europe, all have pretty much focused on food fish, various species. You'll see reference continually to elasmobrax and sharks and rays, lobsters, but the concern for the nearshore fishery, and it should be everyone's concern for the environment at large, are the larval stage fish, the bait fish, fish eggs, and even the smaller species, the copepods that they feed on. What are the implications of electromagnetic frequencies in their world? These types of studies have never been done. We're told, continually that there's a lot of cables in the marine environment that have been there for quite some time with no significant impact, but we don't really know that to be true. And also the majority of the cables that exist in the marine environment in the United States and offshore the United States are communications cables. They're not high voltage export cables, which is what this will be coming from the wind farm. So that being said, basically the studies that we need to assess the potential impacts that this project might have on our nearshore fisheries have never been accomplished. And as there is no apparent urgency, also in spite of what we've been told, there's no apparent urgency for this project. As recently as last week, the New York Independent System Operator, NYSO, released their 2018 Gold Book, which is pretty much the state of the grid in New York State. And it continues to show a downward trend for peak power demand and demand in general in Zone K, which is Eastern Long Island. So in light of the fact that there's no apparent urgency for this project, is it responsible for us to move forward with this gateway project that the studies have not been accomplished on, when we have the time to do it, we have the time to do it right, and the project should be delayed until such time as those studies have been accomplished. Demersal trawl surveys of food fish, ground fish around Block Island are not the level of study we need. Studies on DC cables that cross Long Island Sound, that's not the study that we need. What we need are studies that will clearly indicate what impact a 138 kilovolt, 60 hertz AC cable, which is what this project is going to be exporting. What impact will that have on the bottom feeders that live offshore of Beach Lane and Wainscott? Because the long-term impact could be significant. We've made mistakes before with other supposed studies that were sufficient to determine something to be safe for our environment, and look how that turned out for us, DDT for one. There's no excuse to not do this the right way. And in the words of my friend and colleague in this matter, Bonnie Brady, do we want to do this now, or do we want to do this right? Claiming that they'll do the studies after the project has commenced and that they have the real estate rights to move forward is not the responsible way to approach this project.
My name is Bonnie Brady. I am the Executive Director of the Long Island Commercial Fishing Association. We are based in Montauk, New York, and we began having difficulty with the Deepwater project before the lease was even sold. New York as a state had no input on the Rhode Island wind energy area, which did a memorandum of understanding between only Massachusetts and Rhode Island fishermen, and New York was not even included, even though a lot of New York fishermen fish in the area. So they made this federal lease area. They actually removed areas that Rhode Island fishermen fished in of economic importance, but because they did not include New York at any step in the federal process, we had no input. When they first came to town, we told them very clearly that there were a lot of problems, and they basically, no matter what we said, they kind of, I think my own impression is they just, okay, check the box, met with fishermen. Fishermen told them, you can't do that, it's a cod nursery. Check the box, spoke with fishermen. When fishermen said, you need to space them in a certain way, they said, check the box, spoke with fishermen. The Rhode Island wind energy area process, the SAMP that was included, was completely funded by Deepwater Wind. They had a $3.2 million escrow account in which they were paying SAMP apparently $250,000 per month, and in exchange for that within the contract there were certain deliverables. The Coastal Resource Management Council of Rhode Island would approve the SAMP, that Deepwater would be chosen as the primary and only wind farm developer, and within the language, the Coastal Resource Management Council specifically created legislative language that made the applicant for whatever wind farm would exist within that area, made sure that they would be required to do a fisheries mitigation plan with the Coastal Resource Management Council as the negotiators, with fishermen. In order for them to get any approval or any permit, they were required to do a mitigation plan, and within that mitigation plan they had to fund it completely, include data, include science, all of the things that were required for that project that they have not done with this one. When I asked Aileen Kelly specifically, because, well, not actually, I was at the town board meeting and I spoke to them and I said, you've done nothing for a fishery mitigation plan for New York fishermen. And she said, oh no, we've got a plan. And I said, not for New York fishermen, you don't. The only reason that they did the Block Island plan is because they were required by law to do so in order to get the permits. They are not required by law to do anything. There is no federal legislation, unfortunately, that will make them do what they had to do for Block Island for us. Even with the mitigation plan that they included, none of the science that was done was peer-reviewed, and the sampling size that was done was of such a small amount that you would not be able to prove or disprove anything, which probably was the intent. We have tried, back from, I think, 2015, when the town board pushed the sustainability committee to say, yes, we're going to be 100% renewable by whatever date. I called Larry Cantwell that day and I asked him, Larry, you haven't been talking to the windmill people, have you? Because there's huge problems with the windmill. And he said, oh no, Bonnie, we would definitely let you guys know. No problem, absolutely, we wouldn't do a thing without you. He sent a representative from the town of East Hampton to the LIPA meeting in 2015 or 2016 supporting any of the projects that were existed. They never spoke to us, even though the person who was the secretary and the representative from the town on the sustainability committee was also the representative for the fisheries advisory committee. We were broadsided, and at no point did they ever come to us and say, hey guys, we're thinking about this. What do you think about that? How would that affect your economy? How will that affect the grounds? What do you all think? They did nothing. As far as in the things that are done, it's not just the idea that fishermen won't be able to access the areas. The problem is the industrialization of the ocean floor that's required to do this process. You have to pile drive the ocean floor. You have to then jet plow it, which is liquefying the ocean floor. Let's see, pile driving. The sound alone creates decibel levels that will kill fish with swim bladders in the area, will create lesions for fish like cuttlefish, which are squid, through the concussive particle pressure waves that exist in addition to the sound alone. If you're a marine mammal or a whale, 220 or 240 decibels will deafen you, either permanently or temporarily. That is listed within the Marine Mammal Commission that put comments through at all of these sites. Even the survey boats, when they go out there, they've got things called DP thrusters and side-scan sonar that at a nanosecond rate, but it's going 24/7, it's at the level that's considered capable of permanent temporal shifts in hearing for marine mammals and whales. The jet plowing, in addition to liquefying the ocean floor, is not really that great for benthic habitat. Benthic habitat is what lives at the ocean floor level, which is the basis for food for other fish, where larvae exist, where young of the year try to hide. If you liquefy it, that's an issue. It's a huge industrialization that everyone seems to think that offshore wind is a great thing and it'll be free. Everything that's important as far as from our perspective, and not only from our perspective, from a biological perspective, happens underneath the waterline. In addition to the studies that have shown that these things, depending on how they're arranged, can actually create weather patterns of their own. In fog, in any of the conditions of wind, they're not going to be able to work in the area, but the biggest problem is that the fish and the migrations of the fish, anything from the live, breed, or migrate through, these things shouldn't be anywhere near them.
Bob Valenti from Multi-Aquaculture Systems. I came to this area, to the East End, to work at the New York Ocean Science Lab doing the before studies for the Shoreham power plant. And I was amazed when I got here that the plant had already been constructed. And what the lab did were independent studies on the fisheries to see the before effects, something that Deepwater has not really done. They've hired groups to do this, but they're hired by Deepwater to come up with results. And I'm totally against offshore windmills at Cox's Ledge, simply because it's a cod spawning area. And the noise from pounding in these windmills, as well as even the windmills vibrating, are going to have an effect, if not on the spawning ability of the cod, but also on the larval rearing of cod. Even mild aeration in an aquarium affects the development of pelagic fish like cod. And that, to me, is a major drawback to Deepwater Wind. It takes years to accumulate that data, and they have not done that. The cost is another thing I'm always concerned with. They receive 25 cents a kilowatt hour from PSE&G to produce a kilowatt of electricity, which goes to Block Island. And apparently then PSE&G adds on a little more for the delivery of that electric, and people on Block Island are paying a reduced rate, which is probably 30 cents a kilowatt hour. To give you an idea of what that would mean here, I'm paying 17 cents a kilowatt hour, and my electric rate in the winter is $4,000 a month. In the summer, it's $6,000. If that 17 cents went to 25, 20 cents, I would be gone, as would many businesses out here. And it's not because I'm against green energy, it's because I'm against green energy put in an inhospitable situation like offshore, where it's going to cost a fortune to maintain these windmills in an environment that's corrosive to any kind of metal.
Hello, my name is Anthony Sosinski. I am a co-author of a book called The Speck in the Sea, and I am also a full-time offshore lobsterman out of New York, Montauk, Long Island. I have the lobster boat Anna Mary, and today I want to tell you my opinion and how I feel about the offshore wind farms. People on land think it's a great idea because they don't want to see it in their backyard. And the environment does not have a say in it. So as fishermen, we would like to have a say in actually what is going to happen, we feel, with the offshore wind farms. As this started out, it was supposed to be a 5 wind farm experiment off of Block Island. But it has turned out now that it's apparent that we could have as many as 4,000, that's 4,000 windmills, and since they're basing their stuff off of Europe has produced 4,000 offshore windmills in the last 17 years. The first 15 years of performance, they started dismantling wind farms in Europe based on that technology is advancing way faster than wind development. So the first wind farms have been being taken down at a cost that cost the taxpayers. Now, we're not talking about the environment here, we're talking about the project itself is going to cost as much to take down as it is to put up. Well, if they get 4,000 windmills to put 4,000 wires across the ocean floor, that means our offshore scallop fishery will have scallops living amongst the electrical wires. That will mean that my lobsters will live amongst the electrical wires, and our seafood that is as precious as we can ask for will be living amongst electricity that it's not a wind farm, it's a power plant. So what the United States has done for us is this. We've preserved the species of seafood, and we've cut the amount of seafood that we can take back to land, and now in return they're going to put the power plant on top of our seafood. That's the food that every American and every person around the world, because our seafood does get shipped around the world, will be eating. Now, as we eat it as a society, we're going to find out what that electricity actually did to our seafood. Now, it might not be in my generation, but if I feel that if we remove the natural bottom, have to put foundations in because it's going to be a job site. So the first 15 windmills at Cox's Ledge, which would be Deepwater, will first have to remove the boulders off of Cox's Ledge, put them in a barge, and ship them off the job site, which then will remove the habitat that has been naturally there for millions of years. At this point in time, it does not feel green to me that our wind farms are going to be a sustainable resource like our seafood. This is old technology. We are being suckered right now to get involved in a project that on its merits is not going to work. We do maintenance on our fishing boats every year based on them being out in the ocean. Well, salt water and steel don't like each other. Nevertheless, the salt water and electricity like each other. The maintenance on this stuff is going to be a lot larger than it would be on land. And at this point in time, I feel that we have not exhausted every piece of the upland to produce our green energy so we can leave our valuable and sustainable and virgin ocean as is. I have a chart here just to show you how big of an area we're talking about. With Long Island being here, and this is only going to East Hampton, they want to put this cable from here all the way to here. They can just go to here, which is a lot shorter route. If we're all connected together as a grid, if the cable just goes to here, if they did put this in, we would still be getting the power because indirectly these companies are all intertwined together.
Hi, I'm Chuck Marisi, fishing captain out in Montauk, New York, and I own the Fishing Vessel Act 1. I'm an owner-operator, and we're kind of talking about the wind farms here, Deepwater. It's crazy. It's kind of like the end. It makes me sick inside. I almost feel like they put the quotas so low to keep us out of the area that it's not worth going there. I used to catch 25,000 pounds of cod a year. I'm not allowed one codfish. I went fishing there for flounders. I had to throw over 400 pounds of codfish. My neck got so stiff, I thought I was gonna have a heart attack. I threw the fish over and I went home, and I haven't been back in 2 years. Okay? It just so happens that they're putting these windmills right there. Okay? What I'm really concerned about is they're gonna put the windmills there They're putting them on the biggest deposit of natural gas on the East Coast, down by the city in Cox's Ledge, okay? And first it's gonna be the windmills, and then 10 years from now, it's gonna be the gas. You know, New York, we've been getting stepped on and spit on as commercial fishermen, and I've had it, you know? I've ran a business, I could catch fish, but 50 pounds, see this box? I can't even fill it up with fish. I'm not allowed to fill it up with fish, with fluke. I can only fill it up halfway. Halfway with sea bass, halfway with fluke. How am I gonna run a 55-foot boat with a C-18 Caterpillar in there? I'm for green energy. This is not green energy. This is a money grab. The politicians are involved in it. I know that for a fact. It's tough enough now getting help with the price of land around here and rentals, okay? It's crazy. It's my way of life. I know how the Indians felt. It's not even funny. It's, you know, people come out to Montauk for the beauty and stuff. This morning I went to look at the waves to go fishing, and I'm at B Surf and Sand parking lot, the first overlook on the old Montauk Highway, and what do I see? 5 or 6 windmills. Swear to God, go look. You're not allowed to use an outboard clamming in the lake because it destroys the bottom. But they're gonna do this on a scale 100 times bigger out on the ocean where everything breathes. I can't really say much more. It makes me sick inside. It tears my guts apart.
I am Dan Farnham. I've been living and fishing commercially in Montauk for 40 years. I'd like to start off by saying that I am totally in favor of renewable energy sources. My major concern is the safety of, number one, being eliminated from those fishing grounds, which Deepwater says we will not be forced out of the grounds except during the construction period. But our concern is that even after construction, when these windmills are up and running, we won't be able to fish there. Deepwater refuses to acknowledge the fact that in Europe, either fishing, trawling, this is either banned completely or deemed too dangerous to partake in within the farms themselves. They are proposing anywhere from 7/10 of a mile to up to a mile of a spacing between each windmill, which would not allow us to continue to fish in those areas. And it's not just this wind farm we're worried about, it's the whole cumulative effect of all the different proposals. From this 15 windmill farm going east, Deepwater has another one planned, well over 100 windmills, and there's 2 or 3 more planned to feed power supply needs or goals up in New England. And we're probably looking at up to 800 windmills in that area. So 15 doesn't sound like a lot when you go to East Hampton Town Board and we start complaining about it, but when you take into the fact that there could be 800 windmills out there within 6 or 7 years, it's going to make a tremendous difference. Number one, even taking a 100-foot boat in heavy weather in the middle of the winter when everybody is on land cuddled up at home in their beds working off the energy from these windmills, we're going to be coming and going, plying our trade, trying to get through these windmills without running into them. And let's forget about fishing in them within them in the middle of the winter. Our gear stretches out 1,000 feet behind the boat, and the nets spread out 300, 400 feet wide, door to door. If we get hung up on one of these windmills in a gale wind in the middle of the winter, and hung up on one of their cables that are exposed, we're at the mercy of the wind and the tide, and we could obviously be drifting down to a large steel structure and either lose the boat or damage the windmill or whatever could happen. Which leads me to the point that Deepwater Wind specifically has not acknowledged that there would be any danger to us, our crew, or our boats, or our gear. They refuse to come up with a plan yet to reimburse us for any damage to our gear, loss of fishing grounds. They refuse to deal with us in any way, shape, or form. All they want to do is throw money at the town of East Hampton as bribes.
My name is Daniel Farnham. I'm a second-generation commercial fisherman from Montauk, New York. As a commercial fisherman, we are stewards of the environment. Our business is, depends upon a sustainable resource and a sustainable fishery. Otherwise, we don't have a future business out here. And these are my concerns for offshore wind. Because when you have a new industrialization coming into the ocean, it harms the local ecology, the local environment, and ultimately it harms my business. The way we manage fisheries resources, there's only one input control. It is to decrease fishing effort or ban fishing effort outright in certain areas. When you have a new player come into the game, ultimately that has to negatively impact the existing user groups that are the commercial fishermen. Deepwater Wind has yet to recognize this negative impact. They say we will not be impacted in any way, and still fails to adhere to BOEM's, the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management's, best management practices for mitigation measures between offshore user groups, mainly between offshore wind lessees and commercial fishermen. If they had actually come to the table and sat down with us, we could have worked out a wind farm that wouldn't have negatively impacted the existing user groups and still would have provided offshore wind. But instead, they have called fishermen liars and have refused to negotiate in good faith. That's the main reason why I am opposed as a commercial fisherman, but even as a community member, I am opposed as a ratepayer. The fact that Deepwater still has yet to announce or release the power purchase agreement, or PPA, between themselves and PSE&G, that is unsettling to me. I have asked Deepwater time and again for their information and research on the ability of mobile gear fleets in Europe to fish within wind farm arrays. They have told me that they have hired a researcher, but I have yet to see any research done on this. I have asked for them to take me out on their trawl surveys and show me that their trawl survey boat can successfully tow over the concrete mattresses that they use to protect their cables. They have not taken me on this trawl survey, and I do not believe you can successfully trawl over these cables, and that's why they have pushed me off. Besides the Deepwater Wind project that we currently have being planned in this area, there are 2 other companies and 2 additional leases that are going to be auctioned off this year. Between the major states on the eastern seaboard, from New Jersey to Massachusetts, governors have now mandated 10 gigawatts of offshore generated electricity. This will have the effect of installing upwards of 2,000 windmills in our offshore environment. This will create a literal forest on what we currently fish as a savanna. We have asked for these turbines, when they are placed, to be greater than 1 mile apart, preferably up to 2 miles apart, so we can safely navigate and fish within these wind farm arrays. Instead, developers have positioned them as close as 0.7 miles apart, which, when you're in an offshore environment with foul weather, wind, waves, and remember, no brakes, this becomes a scary nightmare where life and businesses are threatened. Yet we still have no mitigation plan between ourselves and Deepwater Wind or any of the other wind developers. Currently in this country, we do not have large enough vessels, specifically jack-up barges, to construct these turbines. The ones at Block Island were primarily constructed by foreign flag vessels with foreign workers. When I spoke to Bay State Wind, another wind developer, they said that for monopile style turbines, we don't even have the quality steel produced in the US. So, these offshore turbines will be built by foreign workers with foreign steel. This is particularly insulting to a commercial fisherman because by law, we have to have our vessels built in the United States with U.S. steel. If I try to import a vessel or build a vessel with foreign steel, it will be seized and will not be allowed to fish in our federal waters.
My name is Joel Hovenesian. I own a little stern trawler over here in Port Judith. We fish out of Port Judith, Rhode Island. And I'm going to give a little history of the way things happened here with Deepwater Wind and what we were promised and assured and the way things actually turned out. In the beginning of this process, Deepwater Wind gave a bunch of public hearings or town hall meetings, I guess they were, and people came, and I attended some of these meetings, and the industry was very nervous about the cables and the ramifications of all this industrial action taking place on the bottom of the ocean. And we were assured by Deepwater Wind that there wouldn't be any problems, but we were still very leery of the whole process and what was going to happen. Initially, we were told there was going to be one cable mat, concrete mat, excuse me, to cover up the cable where they couldn't bury it. It ended up being, it was over 20, I believe, 27 or something like that. That's out there now, 27 concrete mats where they couldn't bury the cable. And these mats have created issues where we've been towing our mobile gear, and several boats have hung up on them and done damage to their nets and gear and lost time. And myself, I put in a claim with Deepwater Wind because we were assured from the outset that if there was a problem, we would be compensated and taken care of. When I contacted Deepwater Wind, I was told that they no longer are owners of the cable. They had relinquished control of the cable to National Grid, who would be the people that I would have to deal with. So I called National Grid, and initially my claim was rejected out of hand. Didn't want to hear it. So I wasn't too happy with that. I went to my federal delegation, who rattled a few cages, I guess, at National Grid, and lo and behold, they looked at it again and they offered to pay me 50 cents on the dollar for my claim, but only if I were to sign a non-disclosure agreement. That in itself was not acceptable. Basically, my feeling is that National Grid and Deepwater Wind don't want the public to know what's going on, though they claim to be transparent in this whole process. The transparency is not there. My opinion is that they can't be trusted. They make all the promises in the world, and at the end, when it's time to come through on their promises, they give you nothing. So they tried to buy me off for 50 cents on the dollar, and only if I were to sign the non-disclosure agreement. I won't do it. I won't be bought out. And these people, in my opinion, cannot be trusted. They lied, is what they did. They lied to me. They lied to other fishermen. They lied to this industry. That's my opinion. Thank you.
My name is Terrence Wallace. I'm a commercial fisherman in Montauk. I've been fishing the waters almost 30 years and have very high concerns of the windmill procedure taking over my living and damaging the oceans that I work in.
Hi, my name is Don Ball. I've been fishing on the water all my life, and these wind farms are not the best idea. We should have some greener energy, but I feel that we should find other places for them, not in our ocean.
My name's Mike Skarimbis. I'm a scallop fisherman out of Montauk. I've been fishing out of Montauk for 30 years. One thing I want to point out is while supporting the family doing this, we're listening to this wind farm people tell us everything is going to be fine and there'll be no problems. And there's not a guy out here that's buying it. Been through too much regulation with the federal government to have a bunch of wind farm people come in here and tell us, don't worry about a thing, we're gonna make it all right. You're talking to the wrong guys. We've been through this too much.
I'm Brendan Dam. I'm a second-generation commercial fisherman on a gillnet, monk, and lobster boat. You know, these guys all over have been fishing for, 30, 40, 50, 60 years and gave up, a ton of quota that was in the short term that was supposed to be given back in the long term, and for the next generation, for my generation, and now we are commercializing the ocean and the fish and the last untainted protein source we have available to us on Earth.
Hi, I'm Charlie O'Connell. My boat's the Independence. I'm partners with Danny Fagan, and I guess we're talking about the windmills. We lose fishermen every year, and it's a very dangerous thing, and we fish in certain lines that we know are safe. And to bring someone in where they can just put things and not let us know where they are, and not let us put them on our charts, or they don't even know where they're going to be, let alone how they're going to affect the fish, because it seems like they're already affecting the fish in a negative way, and I think they're affecting the fishing industry in a negative way, and I think they're not only going to affect our living and our catch and our putting food on the table for our families and for everyone that we sell to in a business in Montauk that has been around for generations on generations. It's the oldest industry in Montauk. But also it's going to affect lives, and not just by putting food on the table, but also people could die from this. And that's the most dangerous thing, is that I don't think that they have any idea what they're going to do yet. They're just going to get grants and be able to put it anywhere they want, and they have free reign. And quite frankly, that's just dangerous.
My name is Bruce Beckwith. I'm a commercial fisherman from Montauk, New York. I'm a dragger fisherman. I've worked on the water my whole life. I've got a lot of concerns with the windmill. There's a lot of unknowns about the windmill project. My main concern is, one of them, is the hazard to navigation. And it's a fact, irregardless of who you are. These are going to be structures in our pristine open ocean that we're going to have to deal with when we're transiting different fishing grounds. Just going to be another level of stress for us. But fishing is a very stressful way of life, especially if you're a New York fisherman. We're at a huge disadvantage with a lot of our fish species when it comes to quotas. This whole thing could be just another nail in our coffin. And we're pretty stressed out as it is with this whole project and some of the draconian regulations that we got to live with on the state and the federal level.
In your own words, tell us what your biggest concern is regarding Deepwater Wind.
My biggest concern is that they're going to put these windmills in. The fish are not going to like them. The fish are going to disappear around them. My biggest fear actually is that I'm not going to be able to fish in those areas. Wherever they put windmills, we won't be able to fish around them. It's dangerous. And I'm just afraid that they're going to chase the fish. They're not proven. They're certainly expensive to operate. I can't believe that anybody from PSE&G or anybody else would sign contracts where you have something that doesn't cost you anything to run, but the price goes up 3.4% every year. I mean, it's just a scam. People who think, I could almost agree with this, with giving up fishing grounds, if it was going to be beneficial to everyone, to ratepayers, people all over the country. I could almost agree with it. But the problem I have with the whole thing is that I've given up for 20 years. Fish managers told us all this stuff: sea bass, scup, fluke, stripers, everything was worth money. Throw them over the side, conserve, don't go near them, stay away from them, work on the cheap stuff, find other fisheries, find other markets. You on your dime go find all these other fisheries. We did. We stayed away from those other stocks. Now that they're rebuilt, now that we're getting a chance to get some of them back, the government is now saying, yeah, sorry, you can't fish there. We're giving them to these foreign companies that are going to build wind scams there. And like I say, I can almost see giving up fishing grounds if it was going to benefit everybody. But the sad truth is that these things are not going to benefit anybody but the people that are building them. It's not going to benefit the electrical companies. It's not going to benefit the people in this country because we're not building them. Foreign companies are.
Hi, my name is Chris Scola. I'm a commercial scallop fisherman out of Montauk, New York. I've been a commercial fisherman for almost 30 years. and I am vehemently opposed to industrializing our ocean. The way I see it, if we fill our ocean with wind farms, it's going to cause consolidation of the fishing grounds. It's going to cause increased competition. It's going to cause overfishing. As of now, we don't know what kind of effect these wind farms are going to have on our grounds. We don't know how we're going to be affected by the EMFs. We don't know how we're going to be affected by the construction process. And we don't know what kind of access we're going to have in the wind farm areas, or even if fish stocks will return to the areas, to the wind farm areas. And I'm not too keen on being a guinea pig. I have a family, I have a mortgage, and I have bills to pay. And it seems like we're getting nothing but lip service from the people who are advocating for this thing, telling us that this is all going to be okay. That, oh, well, you know, we need to do this because of global warming, because of ocean acidification. Ocean acidification is going to destroy your fishing stocks anyway, so we need to build this wind farm. I'd rather take my risk with the earth going through its natural motions than watch some hedge funders make billions of dollars off of my back and lose my livelihood and ruin my children's future, because my children won't be able to do this either. Wind is an intermittent energy source. We know that. We're not going to be shutting down our power plants. Our power plants, our conventional power plants, are still going to be running 24/7. All we're going to be doing is adding a whole other infrastructure at significant cost to both our wallets and to our environment. What are we going to gain from this? Has any country in Europe seen a reduction in carbon emissions? No. At best, maybe they've gone neutral. But look at the countryside. Look at the shorelines in Europe. They're covered in wind farms. They've ruined their natural environment. And this is what we want for America. If any of you really cared about the environment, if you cared about green energy, we'd be supporting mom and pop businesses putting up solar. We'd have a law that says any new construction, you have to put solar panels in our house. We'd be building microgrids. And anything behind the meter, that's where intermittent energy should be used. Not ahead of the meter, not industrialized intermittent energy sources.
I'm Mike Decker, commercial fisherman, Montauk. Yeah, it's just about the ocean, about, you know, taking care of the ocean. You know, we're facing, with the last presidency, we're facing national monuments to save the ocean. So they want to shut down parts of the ocean that's way out far that nobody could see to preserve the ocean. And on the inside here, though, now they want to build everything up and build infrastructure all over the ocean. And the bottom line is, it's just about money. They don't really care about the ocean, is what it seems like. Inshore is where everything breathes and comes to life. And there's all houses all built up on that, but you can't ask everybody to tear down their house and put it back, because those are all the people that's funding everybody, that funds the aquariums and the NGOs and all that stuff. And it's just the bottom line, it's about money. It's not about saving the ocean. At one point I remember hearing talks about lowering noise in the ocean for the whales because there's too much noise, and reducing ship noise. But now they want to cover the bed of the ocean with electromagnetic or whatever comes out of the wind farm lines. There's going to be some kind of noise that's let off from that. There's been studies in Europe. Fishermen talk about areas, they steam through whole areas that they used to fish that are now void of fish. There's one study shows that it hampers the reproduction of codfish. They're going to go put these things on Cox's Ledge, which is a spawning ground for codfish. We're not allowed to catch codfish because they're in such decline. So now they're going to go put all this stuff on their home where they reproduce, and now where's everybody? Where's Noah? Where's everybody saying that we have to help these fish, that we have to do something for the fish? Nowhere. They're silent. They say nothing, because in the end it's all about money and the bottom line. Why do we need wind farms? Why not cut down a few trees, put solar panels on everybody's house, and then everybody can get power from the sun? The only problem with that is then you put all the power in the people's hands. You take it away from the 1%. That's not what they want. It just doesn't work for them, because then you'd be putting the power in the hands of the people.